Good afternoon. Today we're here to talk about a topic that's somewhat near and dear to my heart, which is building a twin to deliver a digital twin. My name is Joe Gadira. I'll give you a brief background on myself. I'm a project management contractor, have been in the construction and/or projects management business for about the last 30 years, primarily in oil and gas and now in the chemical industries. Currently working with LyondellBasell, to deliver a grassroots greenfield chemicals plant and an extra unit in the Gulf Coast region of Texas. I've spent my career in a variety of owner management related roles in capital projects and management as an interface manager, for a brief stint about contracts manager, responsible for technology and telecoms, implementation of advanced work packaging, for companies including Hess, Tosco, Phillips, Conoco, Exxon, Chevron, and others. Background in computer engineering and information systems, degrees in business and engineering, and currently engaged as a project manager in the chemicals and energy segment. So talking about digital twins and expecting something different than what we would typically expect, has caused us to take a different approach on our project. A little history. Our project made two kind of key decisions that have an impact on what we're here to discuss today. The first was to implement AWP. So it was going to be the first use of AWP by the company, and also the first implementation of a digital twin. And so for us, that meant going out and getting some help, because these were both new concepts to the company and to our project. So we sought expertise in AWP from the industry and brought in industry consulting to help us implement and execute on an AWP program. We partnered with an engineering firm that had AWP implementation experience, and we formed an integrated project management team that included a partner with both AWP implementation experience as well as technology experience in building and supporting digital twins. It's a little different for us. So a large group of individuals with very varied backgrounds, but all of which were to help us achieve our goals. Now, we all know, at least in basic terms, what a digital twin is, and there's a definition here for you to see. But part of deciding what the digital twin was going to mean for our project meant setting some very realistic expectations. And so we early on decided that our digital twin that we would hand over to operations meant the ability to intelligently view and navigate the asset that we were going to build. So that meant documents, core data that was identified by operations and maintenance that were necessary for operating and maintaining the plant, a 3D model, intelligent P&IDs, and of course the ability to easily navigate and retrieve that data using a friendly front-end user interface of some kind. Pretty traditional, but very reasonable set of expectations, and also very achievable. And if you know the typical timeline around that, that usually means we start to build out proof of concepts and then start to execute on understanding the exact data needs that we would have. Generally in the detailed design and executing phase of a project, and we don't really start to build out our twin until we start to move away from bulk-based construction into systems-based turnover and completion, as you start to get as-built data. But about a year ago, a little more than a year ago, we sat down in a meeting with the owner, and the owner said, he says, you know, I always thought we're going to have all this really cool technology and I'd be able to push a button and I'd be able to see all these kinds of things. For example, he says, I thought I could push a button and see area XYZ in my plant. And we said, well, yes, that's exactly what you'll be able to do. That's what we're building. We're going to hand that over to you. He says, I don't think you understand. He says, I kind of had a thought that I would have that today. He says, because what you're looking to give me a year or two from now, I really kind of need today in order to help me better commission my plant. So that in this case, the owner and the operations and maintenance team are actually part of the project. They're responsible for the pre-commissioning and commissioning of the plant. And so what they were asking us to do was say, find a way to leverage all the tools and technology the data that we had collected or were collecting to find a way to improve not just the project's outcome, but to help them be more efficient in actually turning on this plant. And so we had to take a step back and say, well, we have the digital twin technology, because of course we were going to build that out. And we had a lot of data, right? And one thing we've learned in implementing AWP is obviously it requires a lot of data, mostly focused on construction though, not so much focused on commissioning. And so a big part of this was understanding how do we bridge the gap between the data and the model and the drawings and everything we had that was focused on construction and what was going to be needed to support commissioning our plant. So when we talk about this, he challenged us. We kind of said, well, okay, well, why? Why are we trying to do this? He says, well, he says, you all are doing AWP. And we said, yeah. And he says, and of course, you know, AWP has fundamentally as a goal to improve construction, right? He said, we want to improve time on tools. We get more efficient construction. He says, and you'll shave off days in construction. I said, exactly. He says, well, think of it this way. If we have 1,000 guys working out on the site and you shave off a day of construction, he says, maybe you saved our project $100,000. He says, but if you can make my process more efficient and you shave off a day of my commissioning time, he says, you'll save me $1 million. So what we learned is, you know, $1 of construction is worth a lot more in commissioning. And if we can in turn have better integration between commissioning and construction, I might spend a little bit more on construction, but I'll more than save what I've spent in construction in commissioning. And so who was involved in this effort, right? We had an integrated team that included operations and maintenance, the people who will actually own and operate this plant once it's done. We brought in outside help with expertise in pre-commissioning and commissioning plants. And we started down that journey of bridging that gap between what we had that was in support of construction and what the operations and maintenance team, the commissioning team, really needed to ensure that they could more efficiently turn this plant on in 2022. We started to work hand in hand with those folks, not the usual, okay, you've given us a set of requirements and we'll come back a year from now and deliver, but working day to day to try to understand the problems they were actually seeing or the problems they were trying to solve. And then in turn, learning to leverage what we had in terms of technology and data so that we can solve those problems. And what we started to realize is what they were really asking for was a digital twin. Just a digital twin based on construction and commissioning versus what was necessary to hand over to operations in another 2 years. They need much, much more data in commissioning than they need in operations. If a typical plant may have 100 or 200,000 tags, in operations, they may only care about a fraction of those. But in order to commission the plant, they needed to track it all. And they needed to leverage all of the data, not just the data in construction, but the data they were going to need in operations, put it all together. And just like an operational digital twin, they needed to be able to navigate intelligently between the data, the model, the drawings, the intelligent P&IDs, as well as supplemental data that they themselves would bring to the table. By working with them hand in hand, they started to see how I'll use the term, make the sausage. And they realized, wait a minute, can we do some of that? And so we started to teach them how we do some of what we do in building a digital twin, and they started to run with it. So they started to bring to the table things that we would have never thought of, additional enhancements that had we waited to hand over and then they asked for might have been expensive to incorporate, but were really very easy to do at this stage of the project. Adding another column of data to something that you haven't yet published is pretty straightforward. So they started to bring in their own people and say, hey, can we take the P&IDs and walk through the model with them to ensure that we can do that what's in the model agrees with the process design and we can make corrections along the way? Yes, you can do that. And we showed them how. So now they had a better representation of what they were going to actually walk down during pre-commissioning. Operations and maintenance would come back and say, well, we saw how you do that. Can you do something like this? Well, yes. Can you tell us what's in that, what you're looking for? Yeah, we can do that. And each time, every week, we'd start to see more and more involvement on the part of the people who were going to use this thing to actually commission their plant and then subsequently use it to operate their plant, which had a huge bang for the buck. They started to incorporate enhancements that are leading to significant efficiencies in the future. It improves what they're going to get at the end of the day. And importantly, as it forced us to focus more and more on the data, it led to better quality, more complete data. Many of us are very familiar with the handover of a plant. We like to say we like to see that garbage truck back up to us and dump off all the documents and data associated with our plant. And then we spend the next several years sifting through it to try to find out, what we're missing and then close those gaps. We're doing that today, and that's leading operations to get something better a year from now. So what kind of benefits can we expect, and what kind of benefits are we seeing? First, we started with very realistic expectations. We far exceeded those expectations, in part because we worked hand in hand with the people who are actually going to use it, and they're actually helping us to build it, which leads to a better product for them at the end, and of course helps us to more efficiently execute our project. We start to take the concepts of AWP, which is focused at improving efficiency in construction, and taking that, twisting that, and turning that into, okay, how do we more efficiently execute on commissioning our plant? And how does that in turn drive construction, which of course in turn drives our engineering and procurement? And if we can do that well, I might spend a little bit more in construction, but I'll more than save in what we're seeing in terms of commissioning time. So we see an overall improvement in our project's performance. Every day we have better conversations with construction. We're better able to understand how we can actually visualize what's going to happen, what might be a line in the schedule or a line on a spreadsheet. If you remember that conversation we had with the owner, and he said, I always thought we could just push a button and light up area XYZ. The first time he was able to do it, he said, perfect. We're going to have a talk with construction next week about this because they think they're going to turn that over all at once. And when you saw it and realized that it encompassed the entire plant, you realized that was never going to be realistic. But there was a way to do it, and you could break it down and visualize it, go back to construction to say, this is how we really need to finish the construction and turn it over so that I can efficiently commission this plant. Our delivered digital twin is going to have more value. The data in it is going to be of better quality. It's going to be more complete. And because we worked with the folks who are going to use it, they've identified a number of small changes that we can make today that have huge value for them in the future. And it's very incremental for us to do it now, and so we have. And finally, it improves the adoption and take-up of our digital twin. These are the same people that'll be using it 2 years from now, and they won't be starting from scratch. They'll have a very good understanding of what the tool is, how it actually works, and how they can better use it to make their jobs and lives more easy in the future. I hope you've enjoyed today's presentation, and should you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them in the future at the panel. Thank you.